Hello. Psychiatrist Thomas Szasz will not be forgotten. Thomas Szasz was born in about 1920. He passed away in about 2012. He wrote about 35 books. He was a psychiatrist. He was a professor. As I understood it, he practiced counseling of some sort. He had dialogues. He had conversations with people. He talked with people. In his book, The Myth of Psychotherapy, I believe he said the proper role of a counselor or psychotherapist is to be atriologician, something like that. It's a word, atriologician, which roughly translates into one who speaks healing words. Counseling is an interactive experience where people affect each other with persuasion, with Socratic conversations, with talking exchanges. And psychiatrist Thomas Szasz was very accurate in how he portrayed reality. He rightly concluded that coercive psychiatry should be outlawed. Thomas Szasz wrote a book called Psychiatric Slavery, and the book Psychiatric Slavery analyzes the Donaldson Supreme Court case. You can look it up. I think it has its own Wikipedia article. It said the Donaldson Supreme Court case happened in, I think, roughly sometime in the 70s. Don't quote me on that. But it's a book, Psychiatric Slavery, which is about the Donaldson case. Thomas Szasz defines psychiatric slavery, and this is my understanding of what he says and how he defines it. But psychiatric slavery is when people earn money from non-consensual psychiatry. Psychiatric slavery is when people earn money from psychiatric coercion, force, and confinement. And psychiatric slavery is morally wrong. Just like chattel slavery was morally wrong. Just like the Catholic Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, was morally wrong. Just like burning witches at the stake, the Salem witch trials, was morally wrong. Just like so on and so forth. Other books I'd recommend by Thomas Szasz include Insanity, The Idea and Its Consequences, Suicide, Prohibition, The Shame of Medicine, Fatal Freedom, The Ethics and Politics of Suicide, Our Right to Drugs, The Case for a Free Market. I'd recommend all those. Faith and Freedom. Faith and Freedom is another good one. Check them out. So I would encourage you to learn about Thomas Szasz. I would encourage you to join the cause of outlawing non-consensual psychiatry. In his book, Suicide, Prohibition, The Shame of Medicine, Szasz goes into detail about why suicide should be respected as a civil and human right for adults. And this is not to say that suicide is a good thing, but it's simply that we should use persuasion, reason, and kindness to reduce suicides. We shouldn't use psychiatric coercion, force, and confinement. Suicide prohibitions are wrong. And again, I'm not saying suicide is a good thing. I hope we can reduce suicides to zero using copious amounts of persuasion, reason, and kindness. We just shouldn't be using psychiatric coercion, force, and confinement to reduce suicides. We should again use persuasion, reason, and kindness. I think Thomas Szasz would have agreed, and I think he said it, is that suicide prohibitions have unintended consequences. It has a chilling effect on free speech. Because of suicide prohibitions, people can get locked up for saying the wrong thing in relation to suicide. So within even a confidential counseling relationship, people cannot have open and honest, people in certain circumstances cannot have open and honest conversations about suicide. So suicide prohibitions put a chilling effect on free speech. Thomas Szasz goes into great detail about why suicide prohibitions are wrong, and the two books he focuses most on that are Suicide, Prohibition, The Shame of Medicine, and Fatal Freedom, The Ethics and Politics of Suicide. So I'd recommend you read both those. Thomas Szasz has lots of good ideas. You can look up Thomas Szasz quotes online if you want to get a general idea of his message. You can look up his books on Amazon if you want to learn about his ideas through his books. You can go on YouTube and look up videos about Psychiatrist Thomas Szasz. There's lots of ways to learn about him. His essay, The Myth of Mental Illness, which he turned into a book by the same title, The Myth of Mental Illness, you can look up the essay for free online. It's called, again, The Myth of Mental Illness. Go to your favorite internet search engine, type in The Myth of Mental Illness essay, and it should pop up within the first page, probably the first 1 or 2 results, most likely. Check it out for yourself. As I understand it, with regards to like psychosis, psychosis is a set of behaviors, a set of actions, and in the context of psychosis, I believe one thing that Szasz has said about it is when people are saying things that are deemed psychotic, it's oftentimes because they are speaking in idioms that others cannot understand. For example, an idiom, "It's raining cats and dogs," without understanding the context of that, it doesn't make any sense. How could cats and dogs be raining down? But if you understand the metaphor implied within that statement, it makes sense. So often with psychosis, if somebody says, "I'm Jesus," really what they might be saying is, "I'm important. I want to be important." But again, it comes out as, "I'm Jesus." Maybe they really believe that or feel that, in which case more power to them. As long as they're not hurting anybody else, that should be their right. Thomas Szasz was a libertarian psychiatrist. And he was an atheist, I believe. And I don't think that he interjects some of his atheism into some of his writings. I don't think that helps his case. Interestingly enough, from what I remember reading, psychiatry is the profession that has psychiatry is the medical specialty that has the greatest per capita number of atheists. Yet suicide prohibitions have implicit theological, and here I'm deviating away from what Szasz says. This is my own ideas, but still, please, learn about Thomas Szasz. But implicit within suicide prohibitions are theological beliefs. The prime one being that whatever happens after death is worse than what happens on earth. So if somebody wants to hurt themselves, they either explicitly or implicitly believe that death is going to result in something better than what they have on earth in their life. Does that make sense? So if we have suicide prohibitions, we are enforcing the implicit theological belief that it's better for people to live on earth than whatever happens after death, whether it's nothingness, heaven, hell, purgatory, or something else. There's an implicit theological belief embedded in that, and that's ignored. So if we want to live in a secular democracy, well, suicide should not be effectively illegal. If we want to live in a theocracy, then by all means, please let suicide prohibitions based on Judeo-Christian values, let them stay in place if you want to live in a quasi-theocratic nation. But anyway, I could say more about that, but I'm going to end it there. Thanks for watching. Please follow me on Twitter. It's iMichael10. Follow me on YouTube. I'm Michael10 on YouTube. You can look me up. Follow me on Steemit. I'm Michael10 on Steemit. Follow me on Reddit. I'm Michael10 on Reddit. But I'm going to end it there. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please follow me. Come back. Check back later. And yeah, thanks again. Have a great, wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night, whenever and wherever you may be. Cheers.